Okay, hi everyone. My apologies for the technical error, and we are back. So again, let me just repeat a couple of points that I've mentioned earlier. So now we are at the 19th session of our Facebook Live series, and we will talk about basic conversation skill, Conversation 101, how to engage in genuine and meaningful conversations. And let me just begin with again with a quote from Yogi Berra, quite a famous celebrity, an ex-baseball player. He said that it was impossible to get conversation going because everybody was talking too much. And yeah, I mean, who needs another conversation? Who need more? Who needs more conversation? Right? Because we are all bombarded by all different kinds of stimulation, not only the adults but the children as well. Since young, a lot of children these days are very highly stimulated, and not only that, for adults, we are swamped with a lot of works, whether at home or in office. So who got time for conversation? I mean, conversation can be exhausting, especially if you talk about conversation between people of different generations, different background. It requires a lot of efforts. It requires a lot of energies for us to spend on really a deep conversation. And in comparison, while a lot of people are being tired, exhausted of having conversation, actually other creatures, other creations, I would say, they are conversing. Tech companies around the world like Apple or Google, they develop AIs to communicate with us, and not only with us but also with one another. So we have Apple Siri, we have Google Talk, Google Voice, uh, and when we are so bored or we don't know about what to do next, we can just talk to Siri or talk to Google, okay Google, and they will try to respond to you. And not only that, these AIs, they are also talking to each other, like what happened with Facebook AIs, that the machines that Facebook developed started to create their own language for them to talk more efficiently. And in the end, Facebook had to shut it down. So while other creations uh, are conversing or begin to converse in meaningful ways, the question is, how about us, human beings? We are so exhausted that we are too tired to start yet another conversation, that we've kind of just take it for granted. Or probably we don't really talk at all. We don't really converse genuinely or deeply enough. So some can even ask the question, is genuine conversation for human beings, for people these days, is it becoming a lost art? Is conversation a lost art for us human beings? I hope not. Okay? But almost 100 years ago, another philosopher or an atheist by the name of George Santayana, he observed and he made this conclusion that the primary use of conversation is to satisfy the impulse of talk. So it's just an impulse to talk. It's just to vent out probably our emotion, our frustration. It's just to vent out of necessity, not by our own desire or choice. It's like he was saying that probably it is not really our deepest desire. It's just to vent out of necessity. So is it really just an impulse to talk? I mean, our conversation is just an impulse to talk because there's something that we need to vent out inside of us, or is it just simply a mechanism of survival? Because not only human beings that can communicate, other creations can also communicate. Even plants can communicate in certain way. And animals, especially, they communicate for their own survival. They communicate in order for them to find food. They communicate to establish their territory. They communicate in order for their defense, survival, in order for example, to mate, for the survival of their species, for example. So is it just an impulse, or is it just simply a survival mechanism? Well, I hope for us, especially for us Christians, it is not the case. It is not there is to it. It's not all there is to it in our conversation. That we don't just communicate, we don't just converse out of necessity, out of our impulse, out of our mechanism, survival mechanism. That because there is seen to be some kind of benefits, our own selfish or personal benefits to it, that we have to converse. I hope that's not all there is to it in our communication. First of all, I think we need to understand that we are created in the image and likeness of God. The triune God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, created us as communal and social beings. So we do not only communicate or converse out of our needs for survival or out of our impulse to talk, but we converse because we have been created in a certain way that reflect the beauty and the glory of our Maker. And our Maker, our Creator, is a God who communicates in a personal and relational way with us, His people. It is not out of His needs that God communicates with us. It is not out of His impulse to talk, but it is in His beauty and His glory to converse with us, His people. So just as God Himself is a relational God within the triune God, the Godhead, three in one, so are we created for a genuine relationship. Remember in Genesis chapter 3, when Adam and Eve just ate the fruit, the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, God walked in the Garden of Eden in the cool of the day, and He was looking for them. So I believe this is not just a one-off thing that, oh, because Adam and Eve fall into sin, that God was looking for them in the Garden of Eden. I believe it was God's habit or practice to walk with His people, that He wanted to converse with His people, with Adam and Eve in the cool of the day. Not out of necessities, not out of impulse, but just because God wanted to commune with them. God wanted to have relationship, constant relationship with His people. So I think the question for us would be, how then can we engage in a genuine and meaningful conversation? This evening, I want to talk with you. I want to share with you, there are at least 5 ingredients for a genuine and meaningful conversation. Number 1, for a genuine and meaningful conversation to happen, we need to understand that conversation is a two-way thing. It's a bi-directional communication. So in a sense that in our communication, in our conversation, we should not just be interested in ourselves, or we try to make the other party interested in us, but we need to be interested, genuinely interested in the other person as well. We need to learn to be interested in other people, and we should try to ask genuine questions. I mean, sometimes what can be scary about deep conversation, one of the factors is that some people tend to just keep talking and talking and talking. And that can be quite dreadful to keep listening to someone talking about themselves. So we need to learn to ask questions, not just to keep talking, but to ask questions. How are you doing? I mean, not in a mundane, not in a just a formality way, like how are you doing when you meet someone, but really we ask question, what has been bothering you lately? How can I pray for you in a genuine way? Yeah. How are you doing? So we want to know what happened to the other person. Ask genuine questions. And sometimes we need to be able to ask pointed questions, but not questions that are directed in order to corner someone, like interrogate someone, but really out of our genuine interest in the other person's well-being, we should ask genuine questions. Okay, not just superficial question, not just a superficial how are you, how do you do, but really a genuine question and honest question as well. Okay. So remember that it is a two-way conversation, not a one-way. So this is the first attitude that we need to have. And the second one, before any conversation, genuine and meaningful conversation begin, we need to also remember to respect each other, to have mutual respect for each other. And how can we have respect or show respect for one another is that we should give full attention to the other person. And how can we show respect or give full attention is, first of all, eye contact is very important. That we need to establish eye contact, not staring the person, staring down or staring up or whatever it is, but really to give full attention to the person that we are talking to. Okay, I know it is kind of difficult for people in Asia, in the most eastern cultures, because staring a person directly into their eyes can be seen as being rude or impolite, or challenging the authority. But at least, I mean, depending on your culture, we should give full attention by looking at the person, paying attention in the way that is paying attention to the person. Okay, so other than eye contact, the other part that is also important in giving full attention is our gesture. That sometimes people who lean forward, is seen as being more interested about the other person rather than people who just laid back, and okay, see how it goes. So at least these two factors, our eye contact and our gesture, our body language, must speak of our interest, genuine interest, and respect to the other person. Yeah. And of course, in today's context, we should avoid of getting busy with ourselves. I mean, nowadays everybody is busy, so if we want to have a genuine and meaningful conversation, we should not give out the aura, or we should not give out an atmosphere where we are being rushed, that we are being busy or packed or swamped with our own activities, as if we don't have we actually do not have time to talk, we do not have time to converse. So avoid getting busy with yourself, and especially with our cell phone. I mean, this is something that sometimes I myself am guilty of, that when we are conversing, we are still tied down to our cell phone or our laptops or our own works. If we really want to have a genuine and meaningful conversation, we have to give full attention to the person, respect the person's presence before us, and give full attention. Okay? If you are really busy, then it's better for you to set another date another appointment with the person, rather than having so-called busy attitude, you know to show to the person that we are talking to. So that's number two. So number one is a two-way. So be interested in the other person, and the other one would be respect the other person by giving full attention. And so number three, how to have a genuine and meaningful conversation would be to listen. Okay, I know it may sound unnecessary to mention this, but what I mean by listening here is really listen with all our hearts and minds. Okay, with our full presence. So, and following up the previous point about being respectful, is that if we want to listen to a person respectfully, then we should let the other person to really express their minds and concerns or emotions or whatever it is. So we should not interrupt, but we should let the other person finish his or her sentence. I mean, sometimes we are impatient, probably because we are in a rush, or because we are kind of already have our own conclusion about what the other person is saying. No, we should be respectful, and when we listen to the person, we should be respectful in the sense that we let the other person to finish her sentence, his or her sentence, to really fully express what he or she wants to say. Yeah. And secondly, try to empathize. We want to put ourselves in the other person's shoes. That sometimes our perspective may be different from the other party's perspective. Even when we listen to someone's explanation, if we try to look at it from our own perspective, it may still be pointless. We still jump to our own conclusion, but we try to see things from the other party's perspective while listening to him or her. So that's number three. Number one is a two-way conversation. So be interested in the other party. Number two, be respectful. Number three, listen well. Number four, we need to give the right response, the proper response when we are having conversation. So sometimes after the other party express her concern or her feelings or her thoughts or his or her thoughts, we might need to affirm or clarify our understanding about what the other person is saying. So probably by nodding or even by asking questions. I mean, I didn't understand what you say. I didn't quite clearly get what you say, what you mean. Can you explain it again, or can you elaborate? So it's to affirm or clarify our understanding. So it's for us to avoid jumping into our own conclusion. So sometimes just nodding or just simply saying the word, "Oh, I see," would be enough, you know. And we might be tempted to give advice sometimes, or most of the oftentimes, but we should avoid that. Avoid giving advice if we are not asked. Okay, sometimes uh, our friend or the other person just wants to share, just need someone to listen to their story or feelings. And as what Cicero, a first century philosopher, Greek philosopher, said, silence is one of the great arts of conversation. So when we talk about conversation, we don't only talk about, uh, you know, having a party, a party of conversation, a party-like conversation when one person is talking and then the other person listen, and then when the person stop talking and then the other person will start to reply or talking. No, but sometimes in a genuine conversation, silence is necessary. So when there's time for silence, we should be silent. And we should not jump to giving advice. Yeah. Sometimes we want to clarify. Sometimes we want to ask the person, what does he or she really need from us? And sometimes it's not really an advice. Okay? Sometimes silence is what is needed. And with that, follow up when necessary. That means when the conversation is not done at that point of time, we should not force it to be done, to be finished at that time. We might need another session, another time for conversation. Yeah. So then the last point, or the last ingredient to a genuine and meaningful conversation, is to be truthful. That we gotta mean what we say. That we just say it as it is. We don't have to sugarcoat it. We don't have to discount it. We don't have to add more ingredients to make it more beautiful, to make it more politically correct. I mean, sometimes we are, especially in Singapore, we want to be politically correct all the time. Okay, and sometimes there are times that actually require us to be just honest and blunt about it. Okay, so don't sugarcoat it, just be truthful. Okay, as the Bible said in John 8 verse 32, the truth will set you free. So if, as much as we do not want to offend the other party, we need to be mindful to always tell the truth. Okay, I know it's not easy. Yeah, so to be truthful and at the same time to deliver it in a tactful manner. So it is kind of the two things that we have to keep in balance. To really mean what we say, to be truthful all the time, and also to deliver it in a tactful manner. And of course, in order for us to know when and how to tell the truth, we would need some practice. Okay, I'm not saying that. So what I mean is that after this session, it doesn't mean that everyone will be able to go out there and be truthful and be tactful all the time. No, I think it requires us to practice, keep practicing in life. And sometimes we do make mistakes. We probably, by being truthful, we may offend certain people, some people, or maybe because we want to be tactful, we may be seen as being not totally truthful. So we need to learn from our mistake. We need to keep practicing to have to be to have a genuine and meaningful conversation. Okay, so let me summarize my point, my 5 point. The 5 ingredients for genuine and meaningful conversation is, first of all, remember that it is a two-way communication, two-way conversation. So we want people not only to be interested in ourselves, but we want to be interested in the other persons as well. And we need to be respectful. We give full attention and not to get busy with ourselves. I mean, we know that everyone nowadays is busy, but we want to give the full attention to the other person that we are talking to. And number 3, we need to listen well. We need to listen well by not interrupting the other person. Let him or her finish what they want to say, what they want to express, and then we give the proper response by affirming or clarifying our understanding. Or sometimes we just need to be silent, you know, and we give advice only when the person asks for it, or maybe when after we ask whether he or she needs inputs or advice. And finally, remember to be truthful all the time. That we want to really mean what we say, not just for the sake of being politically correct all the time, but we need to be truthful and at the same time to be tactful when we deliver the truth. And one last thing that I would like to share with you, this is a constant reminder for all of us, including myself, as we have shared in the last few sessions, that our words reflect our heart's condition. So, in a conversation, in a genuine and meaningful conversation, we at the same time also need to deal with our own selves. So we are in a genuine conversation, we are not only talking to the person in front of us, to the person that is having a conversation with us, but in a genuine conversation, we are also reflecting upon ourselves, our heart's condition. So that is why it is very important for us to spend time alone with God. Spending time alone with God is very important. Yeah, because as we converse with one another, we also need to remember that our conversation must be based on God's truth, must be based on God's own characters. So the way we respond to each other and the way we listen to each other should really reflect God's truth and God's characters at the same time. So we want to make sure that our characters, our understanding is really in sync with God's own mind and character. So how to do that? There's no shortcut. There's no instant formula for us how to have a genuine and meaningful conversation with one another. We need to have a genuine and meaningful walk with God Himself, so that we would know ourselves more, we would know God more, and from there we also know each other better. So with that, I end my sharing. So let me go back to the last couple of slides. I share at the beginning that conversation is very important. Especially in today's busy period, everybody is busy, from the young to the old, from children to the adults. Everybody is busy. We are highly stimulated by the social media, by our gadgets. Do we even have time for conversation? Do we even really need conversation? Okay, we are so tired, we are so exhausted with all these stimulations. The answer is we converse not out of necessity or impulses, because we are not animals, because we are created in the image and likeness of God, who Himself is a relational and personal God. And so we want to have a genuine and meaningful conversation, because that is what God would want us to have, not only with Him but also with one another. So how to have a genuine and meaningful conversation? At least 5 ingredients. Number 1, we need to be mindful that it is a two-way communication. So be interested in the other party. As Philippians 2 said, that we should not put the other person's interests above our own interests. Okay? So not only concern about our own interest, but also in the interest of the other person. So it's a two-way conversation. Number 2, we need to be respectful of each other. So how to do that? We give full attention to the other person and not being busy with ourselves, getting busy with ourselves. And we need to listen well to the other person. Make sure that we get what he or she means, not just jumping into our own conclusion. So we need to let the other person finish what he or she wants to express or to say. respectively, and so we want to give the right response after that. We need to affirm and clarify our understanding, and if necessary we may give feedback or advice, but sometimes silence is what is needed. And number 5, finally, we need to be truthful all the time, and also be tactful when we deliver the truth. Okay, these 5 points, and I wrap up the sharing with the importance of having quality time with God, because our words, our conversation is a reflection of our heart's condition before God. So when we are right with God, only then can we be right with one another. Okay? So it is important to really spend a quality time with God in order for us to have a meaningful and genuine conversation with one another. Okay, with that, again, I have more or less finished what I want to share. So I invite any one of you, if you want to give a comment or questions, go ahead. If there's any questions, you can freely comment in the TGIM Facebook page, or you can WhatsApp me directly. Okay, there's an interesting question. I think it's a question through Kochuri, through Lisman. What if the other party, like our boss, do not want to listen and keep talking? When enough is enough, and just quit the conversation. Okay, I understand what you mean. And let me say to you that whatever that we share this evening probably is only privy to us and not to the other person that we are talking to, whether tomorrow or next time. So these five sorry okay these 5 important ingredients may not even make sense to the person that we are talking to next time, in the future, or even tomorrow. What I mean is that sometimes people would not exercise all these ingredients or factors in their conversation. Yeah. And so our role is to be more understanding of this the other person. And what I can say is that sometimes when people are talking and not letting the other party to talk, probably is a condition of his or her own heart. Okay. And as someone, probably for us who are Christians, for someone who is more spiritual than the other person, I think we need to be more understanding. So how to be understanding in this situation or in this context? That we should let the other person finish finish what he or she wants to say or to express. Okay. Probably there's no time for us to respond or to talk, so-called to answer at that point of time. Probably we need to wait for another opportunity. Okay. So in this case, when someone is talking to us and he or she doesn't want to stop talking and just keep on talking and talking and talking, we can just be quiet for one. But if there's really something urgent and important that we want to say, that we want to give feedback to the other party, probably our boss, probably we can do it in another opportunity. So we need to set up a follow-up conversation, okay, and explain honestly that we try to understand what he or she wants to say, but at the same time, uh, we also want the other person, probably our boss, to also understand our point of view, for example. Okay. So probably when your boss, my boss, is keep talking and talking, probably it is a situation, is a condition, is emotional condition uh, that drives him or her to be like that. Okay, so we need to be more understanding. Okay, so that is a 2 cents from me. Okay, if someone wants to if someone keeps talking and talking, not letting us reply or respond, okay, just wait for another opportunity. When you suddenly quit the conversation when he or she is not done talking, I think you know what it means, right? It means people will see it, will see us as being rude or being impolite. So I think that's the last thing that we want to do. Okay, any other question or comments? Thank you for the question. So keep it coming. If you have any question or comments, I know it's not easy, right? To just be silent and let the other person talk, and not only talk, usually talk bad about us. So it is not easy. And I just want to add one more thing. Again, the importance of spending time alone with God is that we will find our security, the security of our identity with God. So when there's someone who doesn't appreciate us as a person, probably our boss, our supervisor, or even our friends or our family members or relatives who don't really appreciate us, um, and they just want to bulldoze their way in our life or in our conversation. When we are faced with that kind of situation, the security of our identity in God is very, very important. Yeah. Unless we are secure in our identity in God, then we will be tempted to just, to talk back and to respond as soon as possible, to answer back all the allegations or just to rebut everything that this person is saying about me or saying to me. So unless we have a security in God, a secured identity in God, we would be tempted to do that. But if we have a secured identity with God, we can wait. Okay. I am not obliged, or it is not always necessary for me to rebut or to answer on the spot. Okay. So again, that is why, the practice of having a genuine and meaningful conversation actually starts in our time alone with God. Thank you. That's a very good question, and something that is really worth reflecting. So again, if you have any question or comment, go ahead, keep it coming. Okay, okay, this is more of a even more practical. My issue is more on how to start small conversation. I'm an awkward person, and most of the time I feel weird and not confident to initiate conversation. So most of the time I just keep quiet, and it makes situation worse. So as I said earlier, as I shared earlier, um, being silent is not always wrong. and sometimes it is necessary to be silent at times. But it is also right that being quiet all the time can make the situation worse. Okay, so if you don't know how to make start a small conversation, my suggestion would be you need to start conversing with someone that you are comfortable with. I mean, I don't know whether you have a friend or a family members that you're comfortable with. Okay? You can just start having small conversation with someone that you are comfortable with. Okay, and another way would be having a conversation in a bigger setting. I know it sounds silly, right? I'm an awkward person. How to start a small conversation in a bigger setting? What I mean is that in the bigger settings, where there is a discussion, group discussion, when you are forced to ask question, when you are forced to have conversation. This is what I mean by being in a bigger setting. So sometimes we need to force ourselves. I mean, it is not easy, definitely, but we need to start from small steps. So in a bigger setting, when there's a group discussion, usually there is already a preset question given in the group discussion. So it is good for us to try to start engaging in conversation from these preset questions. Yeah, and hopefully from there we can uh, train ourselves to start conversation not with a preset questions. Okay. About confident, about being confident. Again, I think there's no instant formula or there is no shortcut in being confident in conversation. You need to start somewhere, and that is why I mentioned earlier that we need to start having genuine conversation, maybe small conversation, small talk with people whom you are comfortable with, whether it's your friends or family members, or even with probably your small group members in the church or in fellowship. But you need to start somewhere, and sometimes you need to force it, to make to force yourself to try to start the conversation. Okay. um, it is almost the same as being a public speaker. I understand that not all people are gifted to be public speakers, but sometimes in our life, in our line of work, we have no choice but to speak in public. And with that, it is the same way. We need to practice. We need to keep practicing and practicing. Okay. And to combine these two, being to start small conversation with people whom we are comfortable with, and to be in a conversation with a preset question, we can combine the two experience together. How? We can try to make small conversation, small talk, with a preset question that we have prepared. Okay. Probably before we meet the person, we just prepare a few questions that we can think of that are relevant to both parties, to both you and the other person. Okay. So, yeah, you need to step out of your comfort zone. There's another one from Mark. What should you do if you are not genuinely interested in engaging in the conversation? Should you truthfully tell, I'm not interested in talking to you? Or, or fake it to look like you are interested in the conversation to protect the relationship? I think in the first place, um, we need to understand that uh, if there is already an invested relationship that we have to maintain, so-called, then the conversation can be so-called genuine and meaningful. I mean, if in the first place there's no there's no invested interest or in the relationship in the first place, then we should be honest. Okay, I believe that we do not have to be in a deep, meaningful, genuine conversation with anyone, with everyone per se. Okay? I believe that there are probably, I would say, boundaries or levels of intimacy with different people. And so we need to respect that as well. So if someone is not respectful of that, then we need to be truthful, we need to be honest, to tell him or her that we are not there yet, you know, that we cannot share this or that with the other person. I think we need to be honest in that regards as well. So I know it is not easy. I mean, there are some relationships that are already being passed down to us or being uh, given to us, probably in our capacity, in our ministry. Yeah. But we need to juggle between these two, that being genuinely invested in a relationship and also being genuinely interested in a conversation. So there are times when we should be honest and blunt to the other person, to the other party, that I think our relationship, our level of intimacy is not there yet, so I can't do that, or I can't share this with you. But there are also times where it is also important for us to get ourselves out of the comfort zone and say, okay, I think I need to know this person more. I can give you an example. I mean, in the ministry, probably in a fellowship ministry or in a church ministry, you are handed down uh, a set of relationship, probably a set of relationship with certain people, probably with church leaders, probably with another organization leaders, that somehow you just need to maintain it, not because you are genuinely interested in that person, but because you are being given a responsibility in your ministry. So for that, then you need to challenge yourself to step out of your comfort zone and try, to have a genuine and meaningful relationship with, I mean, conversation with that person. Yeah. Yeah. So again, these are the two things that we sometimes we need to juggle. Whether I personally have an invested interest or relationship with that person, or it is something that I have to challenge myself to step out of my comfort zone. Yeah. So I know I'm not giving a direct answer yet again, but I'm not saying that you should fake it, you know. But I think you just need to be to see the context, and you need to respond to it both genuinely and as also at the same time responsibly. Of course, I mean, if uh, the relationship is not something that you must you must be responsible for, then you can be just genuine and you can just be honest and blunt about it, that no, we are not at that level. Okay. And I wouldn't call it fake it, even when we are given a responsibility to maintain a relationship with certain people, with certain organization. I wouldn't say fake it, but I would say it can be seen for us as a hassle, as a difficulty, a challenge, or in another sense, it can be in another way, it can be seen as an opportunity for us to actually get to know more people. Yeah. Of course, at the end of the day, you don't have to genuinely uh, be friend with that person at the end of the day. I mean, depending on the context. Yeah. It's not easy, but sometimes we have to try. Okay, thank you. These are difficult questions indeed. So, yeah, I'll try to answer uh, as directly as possible, but sometimes there are no direct way to answer the question, right? But sometimes we have to juggle, and sometimes we have to use our wisdom and to see the relevant context. Oh, again, uh, you can message me directly in through my WhatsApp, or you can paste the message onto the Facebook page directly. And sometimes some of us think that being in a conversation, it depends on our personality. It depends on our whether we are an extrovert or introvert. And for a long time, I thought that being extrovert is more advantageous, because you can engage in conversation more easily. But I learned that there is not always the case. I learned that sometimes introverts can be a very good, genuine people to converse with. Why? Because introverts tend to really think deeper. You know, they tend to spend more time in reflection, in deep reflection, whether about themselves or with God. And so I found that having conversation with introverts is is quite deep and meaningful. Yeah. And many people think that I'm an extrovert. I feel, even as an extrovert, that I need to spend more time to have a deep reflection, whether about myself, my work, my ministry, or about God, or about all of that. Yeah. And why? Because only then can we have really genuine and meaningful conversation with other people. Okay, any more comments or questions? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your audience, as well as for your responses, your comments and question. We really appreciate it. It's been a learning process for me also. And thank you for keeping the questions coming. I really appreciate the questions. And I hope that we all can learn together to have genuine and meaningful conversation with one another. Uh, and at the base, at the foundation of it all, is really our own relationship with God. That only when we are secured in our identity with God, then can we have genuine and meaningful conversation with one another. And we don't have to be defined by anyone, in a sense. If we are secured in our identity with God, then we will not be defined by the response of other persons or other people, or even with what other people are saying about us. But we can be genuine, as it is, before God and before other people. Okay, let me end today's session by sharing the upcoming sessions of our TGIM Facebook Live sessions. So in the following 3 months, we will talk about these three topics: staying focused on tasks in the month of October, and then critical and creative thinking in November, and finally, this could be our last session under the Life Skills series. It is on self-directed and lifelong learning in December. So again, thank you for your audience, and hopefully we'll see you again next time, and we have more discussion and conversation again next time. Let us pray. Father, I want to give you thanks, Lord, for this evening's live session under Thank God It's Monday. We want to give you thanks, Lord, for the conversation that we have, even though we are apart physically, but we are still in conversation thanks to the advancement of technology that help us to have discussion and conversation even on the go. And help us, Lord, to be genuine and to be truthful in our conversation with one another. Help us to build genuine relationship with one another, Lord, through our conversation and communication. And help us also, Lord, to invest in our relationship in genuine conversation, in genuine communication. Life can be busy, but help us, Lord, to really make time for one another, to converse with one another. So I want to give you thanks, Lord, for tonight's session, and we ask for your grace and mercy and peace upon us, especially as we are about to take a rest tonight, and help us to refresh ourselves, rejuvenate ourselves tonight, so that tomorrow we can engage in our work and in our daily tasks, routines, or even conversation with people around us. Thank you, Lord. We commit all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so that's all for our thank God It's Monday Facebook Live session tonight. So we'll see you again next time. God bless you.